I'm not a normal hypnotherapist. I've probably got less experience than most of you sitting in front of me. I was a TV reporter and a foreign correspondent. And so I went around the world covering earthquakes and wars and conflicts and floods and saw a lot of trauma. And when I got back from a lot of those missions, I was asked by the military to go with the British military on all their training missions and teach the soldiers how to deal with reporters and how to get the message across of what they do, rather than reporters just ripping into them and giving them bad press. And I was getting to the end of my career and thought that was quite a good idea and would be fun, and got taken all over the world to show them how to deal with obstreperous reporters. And I'd never been an obstreperous reporter, but I was acting one, and it was quite fun. And so during the course of that training, they suddenly said, well, you can come to Afghanistan with us, and you can show us on the ground how to deal with media and how to give them what they need, but not letting state secrets out. And I was like, oh, no, that wasn't my plan. I was just having a bit of a laugh. And they were like, well, no, we're not going without you, so you have to come. And so at 45, I was taken to Afghanistan, deployed with the military for a full tour. And not only was I deployed, but as soon as I got there, my idea that I sat in headquarters and just advised everybody on what to say went out the window when I was told I had to go on the ground and be a combat camera and show them what to do in the field. So I was like 45 years old running at compounds with 19-year-olds. But what it did do, I was there 2 years in the end. And what it did do was give me an incredible insight into the human body and how it reacts to trauma, and give a real insight into how somebody can be fine one day and then just trip the next day, and suddenly they're not lucid, they're saying things which are completely out of character, and they're acting in ways that are just not suitable to the situation. And so it was a huge education curve for me. And when I came back after 2 years, with not a tad of PTSD myself, I think, when I came back, I went back to the journalistic side of the world and went back on tsunamis and earthquakes and things. And I didn't want to do that anymore. It seemed a bit facile. I didn't have the information to tell the true story. I was making it up half the time. And as you have to, you're just grabbing scraps of information together, and I didn't want to do it. So I changed I thought I'll become something in the trauma world, and maybe I'll go and get a degree in psychology. I don't agree with a lot of psychological missives now. And so I'd learned a lot about hypnotherapy during my TV career, funnily enough, did a lot of programs on it. And so I went to learn to be a clinical hypnotherapist. But what that did was it gave me access to the British military, because all the people that I had trained and mentored in 2010 and 2011 were now the heads of the British Army. So when I came back and I learned hypnotherapy, I wanted to apply it to PTSD. And obviously we have a massive issue in the UK and in the US, and probably Australia and Canada too, with soldiers who really are finding it very difficult to come back to normal life. And so I learned as much as I could about PTSD and hypnotherapy. And then as soon as I was out of my course, I walked into the British military headquarters at the MOD in London and said, I have the cure to PTSD. And they were like, yeah, you're a TV reporter. What's wrong with you? And I said, no, I'm not a TV reporter anymore. I've changed, and I have the cure to PTSD. And they said, seriously, prove it. So I gave them John Watkins' book from World War II, which probably no one read. And then I went back in again, and the Vice Chief of Defence Staff had employed me to go to Afghanistan so I could annoy him and I could actually gain access to his office. And so I said, right, we need to do a study. Let's do a study. And something very interesting was said here, because King's College London is the military arm of the MOD in terms of research. And they said, we can't do a study on hypnosis and PTSD because it would come out positive. And I said, sorry, have you would you like to explain that? And they said, no, if we did a study, obviously everyone would get better and it would be positive. And I said, but why aren't you using it then? And they said, well, it's difficult, and the NHS would find it difficult to quantify, and we need to do a random control method study. And of course, people know if they've had hypnosis or not. So it's very difficult to do a random blind study. And they threw every reason why they couldn't do it at me. And then I said, well, I'll do my own study. I'll go away and do my own study, and I'll prove it to you. And I'll be back in 8 weeks with the proof that it works. And they were like, yeah, all right. And the Vice Chief of Defence Staff was heading for retirement. He was like, yeah, whatever, go and amuse yourself. And so I went away, and as a newbie, and maybe some of you are new as well, or about to be newly qualified, I had no experience of what I was doing at all. I only knew for what I'd learned on my training. And so I advertised on Facebook for 10 people, took the first 10, and then thought, well, I need a protocol. It's got to look like it is something medical. So I took all the elements of clinical hypnotherapy and I just mashed them together. So you'll notice that when you look at the curriculum, you'll say, this is actually just clinical hypnotherapy. And it's like, it is simply, ego parts, age regression, forgiveness of others, forgiveness of self, ego strengthening, just put in an order. And the order did have a purpose, but actually I only realized that after I put it in order. And the idea was I would take everybody through the same scripts, and it was scripts, 1, because I was new, 2, because it had to be a script, because everyone needed to get the same treatment to be able to prove to them it would work for everybody. And I would take them all through the same system, and then we'd see what happened at the other end. So there's no magic in it. It's not my protocol. It is literally every bit of clinical hypnotherapy that we ever learned smashed together. And when I got these poor guinea pigs, these first 10 guinea pigs, and we started. And I can tell you, for those of you who might be new to hypnosis or a bit nervous of getting going or coming back to it and a bit nervous, I've never been so nervous of anything in my life. I've been in some of the worst places in the world. I was petrified. But we just went through, and everybody got the same inductions, the same deepeners, and the same scripts. The only difference was the pre-talk and obviously the post-talk. So they didn't know what I was doing then, so I could say whatever I wanted then, and I was logging it, but obviously I could write what I wanted in the notes, and the actual delivery of the therapy was the same. So since then, I've done, well, I was trying to add it up last night, but close, probably between 500 and 1,000 people, but I haven't got the exact number, using exactly the same method. So one trick pony, whatever they come in with, that's what they get given. And every time it has got to the root cause of the problem, and every time it has led people out the other side. So you'll notice in what the email that I sent you, and for those who will receive it later, that I've sent you an induction and a deepener script that is 45 minutes long. Now, I know some of you will say, well, I can't do that. My session's only 50 minutes. But bear with me while you understand why. So that first induction and deepeners is it aimed at taking someone to the somnambulistic state. So they're basically, you're knocking them out, putting them to sleep as deeply as you can possibly get them. So, and then when you get them there, you'll notice that you were given a script on negativity clearing. And that is the therapy part of the script, which takes about 25 minutes. So we're talking a therapy session of about 1.25 hours to deliver the first part of this protocol. And then every session is about the same, 1.25 to 1.5 hours. The reason for this is twofold. One, because that's what Jack Watkins was doing in World War II. He was taking them down as deeply as he could possibly get them, almost down towards an Esdale state, a coma state. And 2, because 2 NHS consultants were doing the same with veterans in Scotland, where they were using progressive relaxation alone. So essentially that 45-minute pre-script, the inductions and the deepeners, that's all they were doing in Scotland with PTSD sufferers, and they were getting amazing results. And I believe that when someone gets to you and they're so wired and so upset and so wound up, that they need that sense of release where they can just let go of the physical world and zone out. And so that's what I did. And then also, I didn't ask them to answer me in hypnosis. So there's no communication between the client and me during any part of the hypnosis session. And I know straight away there'll be people sitting there saying, what? But there's a reason for it. There's a reason, because the likelihood of what they're seeing, what they're feeling, what they're understanding is so traumatic that they may not want to communicate with you. And a lot of people will be put off coming to therapy because they've done 6 years of CBT already. They've done EMDR. They're coming to you and they just don't want to speak anymore. They've had enough. And therefore, I decided they wouldn't speak back. And that is arch training, actually, that you don't get them to speak back. You just give them the facility to go through their own journey. But I could have chosen for them to speak back, but I didn't. And that, as any of you who've already seen the book, you'll notice that it took them to such a deep level that it made no difference in what they were seeing or the information they were getting. It was just like they were in lighter hypnosis, but so much more profound. And then when they came out, they could tell you all about it if they wanted to, or not if they didn't want to. And so that was the method. And as we go through this course, obviously I'll explain a little bit more about that and how it worked. But basically it was a come in, sit down, how are you feeling, knock them out for an hour and a half. How do you feel now? And the difference in these people from session 1 to session 6 was just dramatic, unbelievably dramatic. I'm sure you've seen dramatic results as well with your work, but for me it was unbelievable. You know, I was on some sort of bizarre train journey with these people, and only 2 of them did not eliminate all symptoms. One of those was a guy who was afraid of the journey, and he was just starting a new business, and he was worried that he wouldn't be able to keep his mind about him if he did the full hypnotherapy. And another one was a chap who was also starting a new business, new job, and he didn't want to have any chance that he might have a meltdown in the middle of it. Both those men have since come back and cleared all their issues and are doing extremely well. But for the book, it went down to 8. There was 9, but one of the guys joined the SAS, so he had to come out of the book. But regardless of that, they're all people who were not cherry-picked. It was literally come in, sit down, first one. And the results I've diligently put word for word in that book.